Josh, can I just say that Lore Corner is like
Got it.
my favorite part of the show every
I appreciate
week.
that. I like it.
It's your fault. I came on here expecting to sit and talk about Destiny like other things, and then you bring Lore Corner into it, and I'm just like, wow. That's all. That's all I have to say.
This one's called Understanding. It's entry 6 in Beneath the Endless Night. That's, of course, what you get from doing the weekly quests. Ikora Ray. Remember her?
I do.
Strode into the future war cult headquarters. It had the air of a church, hushed and reverent, but the air of sanctity was undercut by the intrusion of Vex technology. Wires climbed like vines across the ceiling, and the air was filled with the faint smell of ozone. In the middle of the room, reclining on a seat reminiscent of both throne and operating table, was Lakshmi too. Her face was obscured by a helmet that connected to the mess wiring above. Studious cultists shifted about with their heads bowed, glancing suspiciously at Ikora. As the warlock advanced, the cultist held up a single finger, commanding both silence and patience. Ikora's eyes narrowed. The cultist whispered into a small microphone next to the device. Its sub-audible hum had been inconspicuous, but once it powered down, the quiet felt overwhelming to Ikora. Lakshmi said in repose, presumably orienting herself in the current timeline. "Leave us," she said without opening her eyes. "We'll resume at 1425. Her subordinates filtered from the room, looking past Ikora as if she was invisible. Lakshmi finally opened her eyes and fixed them on the warlock. "I assume you're here to bargain." "I'm not." Ikora's tone was calm and cold. "I'm here to issue a warning of my own." "Warn me?" Lakshmi laughed, her voice thin. "If we have any further incidents on account of your incitement, I will personally find a remote, icy moon to leave you on." Lakshmi tutted. "Only small minds classify prophecy as provocation." She stood up and smoothed her garments. "Certainty in the face of the unknown is the provenance of zealots." Ikora eyed the device. "And the insane. This isn't a debate. And yet you are here. Come, Ikora, you've not seen what I have." Lakshmi gestured to the device. "Dabatsa district, under assault for a second time. Saint 14, pinned down by gunfire. And you?" She trailed off, screaming for help over the comms. "How many of your prophecies have gone unfulfilled, Lakshmi?" Ikora snapped. "I wish you could hear yourself. How afraid you sound." "All those years studying under Osiris, and you're still so naive," Lakshmi replied. Ikora's anger flared. She advanced on the cult leader. "Cut the BS or suffer the consequences. Understand?" Undaunted, Lakshmi's artificial eyes shone bright. "Understood." Ikora stepped back and let her anger pass out of her with a sigh. "Then we're done here." She turned on her heels and strode out. As she left, Ikora wondered whose prophecy she had just fulfilled. Lakshmi's or her own. Yeah, this is just the latest piece in Lakshmi's ongoing incitement of the last city against the fall. Against the Elixni. She's determined that the future she's seen is what's coming to pass. I don't trust future readings. Osiris could see so many timelines, but he couldn't even see the timeline in which we saved Saint, for example. I would take Lakshmi's words with a grain of rice at this point. Far better to trust Ikora and not make her angry.
Yeah.
I feel, especially since we know Lakshmi is openly planning a coup at this point. Okay, and our next one we're going to jump into is Chroma Rush. The Elixni awkwardly shouldered its way to the empty stool at the ramen shop and rested its 4 elbows on the bar. Maurice looked over from the huge pot of broth and, thinking a Titan in one of their ridiculous helmets that arrived for lunch, called out, "Irahisame." It wasn't until he absently stepped to the bar that he realized who his customer was. Metal plating covered the creature's forehead and the side of its face, ending in a nozzle that hissed a stream of bluish mist. A haphazard collision of heavy canvas and metallic weave draped over its shoulders. A Vanguard lanyard dangled absurdly from its neck. It was small for an Elixni, but its angular head still towered above Maurice as it hunched over the bar. 4 blue eyes looked back at him from above a lipless mouth. It opened, revealing rows of thin, sharp teeth. "One item ramen soup," the Elixni croaked stididly. Please. Maurice held his breath, tightening his grip on his pencil, and grinned. He grinned when he was nervous, and this seemed as good of a time as any. The Elixni grinned back, nodded, then opened its horrible mouth again. I smelled it, and the smell was good, it said. Maurice scanned the bar. His other customers sat frozen, their bowls of ramen steaming silently in front of them. He realized his mouth had apparently decided to talk on its own, as if nothing were wrong. He heard himself ask, "How spicy? 0 to 5 stars." The Elixni had anticipated this question. "Spicy 5 stars," it said, holding up one hand with 3 claws displayed, and another with 2. "May I receive additional dead flesh, please?" "You got it," Maurice said, his even voice betraying none of his tension. He turned back to the bubbling pot of broth. Muscle memory took over, and he soon found himself placing a steaming bowl of ramen in front of the creature, who clucked cheerfully. Maurice took half a step back. A small crowd was forming in the walkway in front of the restaurant. Some of the customers leaned in as their curiosity overcame their terror. Maurice noticed the woman in seat 2 needed more water, but it could wait. The Elixni raised its arms tentatively, then turned to Maurice again. "What is the protocol?" Maurice found himself unsure what pair of Elixni's eyes to look into and focused on the ramen instead. "Well, you eat the noodles and pork and egg with..." "Egg," repeated the Elixni, enjoying the unfamiliar word. "Yeah, egg. You eat all that with the chopsticks, and you get the broth with the spoon." Maurice saw how the Elixni's claws dwarfed the ceramic spoon. "Or you can just lift the whole bowl and drink it." Maurice mimed lifting a bowl to his lips. The Elixni nodded. Its claws tapped the metal on its face, and the hissing blue mist ceased. The Elixni held the chopsticks, tested their weight, and respectfully placed them back on the bar before bringing the bowl to its mouth with his upper arms. Above the ramen bowl, Maurice saw all 4 of the Elixni's eyes close. A long moment of tension fell over the shop, the silence broken only by a staccato series of hissing slurps. Finally, the Elixni lowered the empty bowl. It breathed in as the blue mist resumed its thin spray. It looked toward Maurice. "I tasted all of it," it said with deep satisfaction. "I am very thankful." Maurice's grin turned into a tentative smile. "I'm glad you enjoyed it." The Elixni stood and held out what looked like a small model of the traveler. It glowed as it floated in the Elixni's palm. "Compensation," it said. Maurice reached to take the treasure, then drew his hand back. "For new customers, there is no charge," he said. "No compensation. Thank you for coming in." The Elixni cocked its head, then clucked, and the model vanished below the folds of its cloak. It smiled at Maurice. "You," it said, then cleared its throat with a rumble. "You are a..." And the 5 spirited words that followed were replete with hard consonants. In the confused silence that followed, the Elixni nodded graciously, then walked through the crowd, outside and deeper into the city. So, pretty sure this is the same one that Amanda was talking to in the hangar.
Yeah.
With the words that she used to describe Spider.
That's funny.
Yeah, I really like that one. You know, it kind of gives a glimpse into the Elixni in the city.
Yeah.
And then I gotta find the other one. Debating which one I wanna do.
That was quite funny. I like the visual of the Elixni just holding up one hand, but with 3 fingers, and the other one with 2.
Well, I think it's because they have claws.
I know, but I just like that visual.
Oh, yeah.
It's just funny.
Yeah. We're gonna read Reese Walker, which is the Iron Banner shotgun. "No, I will not allow a fallen to fight in the banner. That right is reserved for guardians alone. But if you insist, I may allow a guardian to carry a fallen forged weapon into battle. You are a weaponsmith, are you not?" Lord Saladin to an unknown Elixni. A hurled bottle strikes an Elixni in the head, sending him staggering to the side in a crowded street. Glass glitters on the ground. People gathered in a semicircle around him shout invectives and slurs as he bleeds midnight blue from the deep cut in his brow. He has nowhere to run, cornered between a neon-lit club pulsing with the bass beats of rhythmic music and an alley blocked off by rubble left over from the Red War. "Please no harm, Vikrus's friend," he cries, 2 hands clutching his head, another held out flat as if it would ward the crowd off. "Looking for brother, missing, please." The crowd does not care. They continue to work themselves up into a fervor. Lakshmi too's words fill their mouths, many of them too young or too naive to realize it. Vickers can't understand so many unfamiliar languages shouted at him at once, but he understands the tone of the violence well. His posture says everything. Fear in his eyes carries additional nuance. He fears what happened to his brother. Hate begins to take root in his heart. A foundry worker steps out of the crowd, threateningly racking a round into a shotgun. He aims down at the Elixni, hands trembling. You want to ask about family, the human yells? Vickers does not know what he's talking about. People kidnapped my sister. She was running supplies from Earth to Titan. You raided it. Vickers does not. He is cut off by a blast from the shotgun that pulverizes the street beside him. Vickers crumbles to his knees and cowers. Please, he says, and in the same motion picks up a broken piece of the bottle he'd been hit with earlier to defend himself. The crowd screams in outrage. When the foundry worker advances on Vickers and racks another round into the shotgun, there's a sudden cold snap that fills the air with mist. The shotgun flash freezes, shatters like glass, and scatters into pieces of blue-black stasis. The worker recoils, clutching his half-frozen arms, screaming. Vickers sees the crowd part behind his attacker, and a hunter, clad in black and gold with luminous markings on her armor, strides towards them both. Darkness coalesces around her hand. Stasis crystals drift like tiny moons around her. That's enough, Aisha shouts. You should all be ashamed of yourselves. Look at you. Aisha grabs the injured foundry worker by the collar with her free hand and shoves him back into the crowd. Clear out of here before I clear you out. Now. Wind swirls around Aisha's feet, kicking up crystalline debris in whirling threads of darkness. The crowd recedes like a violent tide, some tripping over others in their haste to flee. As the crowd disperses, Aisha dismisses the sickle of stasis, and the swirling wind at her feet fades as well. She turns, looking at Vickers, and offers a hand out to him. I'm sorry, she says with a tightness in her voice. He cannot see her expression behind the facade of her helmet. Vickers does not take the offered hand. His eyes show the same fear, the same hate. It's okay, Aisha says, slowly offering her hand again. You're safe now. They're not safe, Vickers snaps at Aisha, his eyes tipping down to her hand and then back up to her helm. You are just like Aramis, mind-poisoned. Aisha's breath hitches in the back of her throat, and she suddenly lowers the offered hand, closing gloved fingers into a briefly formed fist. You're hurt. At least let me escort you to a medical. Her voice trails off. Vickers is already backing down an alley, blue eyes locked on her. She feels a weight on her shoulders, in her heart. The Elixni disappears into the shadows, leaving Aisha alone under an endless night sky. It's not explicitly said, but there's going to be another piece that we'll read next week that it's implied that this may be the same Elixni from the ramen shop. Mm-hmm. There is another one that kind of serves, I think, as the resolution to these if you string them together. But, you know, we're seeing they're not just staying to the Elixni Quarter. They're walking around in the city. You know, we see them in the tower. They're going to the ramen shops. They're going to all these places. And they're just like you and me if we were in the city. And humanity's been at war with them for so long that they don't know anything else, understandably. Mm-hmm. And so they're not quite sure what to do. They're terrified. And as we see, they're willing to kill to get out of the way.
Yeah. It's this whole season, right, is just, it really feels, I don't know, it feels powerful in such a subtle way, you know? And, I mean, if you take the Lakshmi stuff out of it, like the Elixni in the city, where we've actually stopped calling them the Fallen, we've started calling them the Elixni, right? And a lot of the Guardians are learning how to cooperate and learn how to live with them, right? I mean, you kind of just said some of this, but like, it's really neat to see, you know, this kind of, you know, story of almost racism to an extent.
No,
right?
it's like, not almost. It absolutely is.
Yeah,
racism.
It's just like coming together to learn how to deal with that, and it kind of, you know, it's telling a very real story that's happening in real life now, right? Like, there's a lot of people who are still, you know, not to like really make it about this, but it's like there's still a lot of racism we see today in our real lives, and to see something like this being tackled in a game that's like not like you go in, you shoot aliens, you collect loot, and you get more powerful, right? Like it's really cool to see. And I think the narrative, we talked about it a little bit last week, but like the narrative over the last year has gotten so much better, you know? It's just like,
oh, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say it's just like it's almost like a totally different game than what we were playing in Destiny 1 or early Destiny 2 stuff, right? Where it just feels different. The narrative feels different. Right.
There was along that line, there was an anecdote I wanted to share from Rami Ismaili, who he tweeted this out yesterday. I want to find his exact tweet because I want to read it word for word what he said. But it was about Destiny. Shit. I thought it was on his profile. I got to go back to mine. I believe it was him who posted it.
You'll find it, Josh. I believe in you.
I know. I really hate that I don't have these things pulled up, but we get talking and get onto really good tangents. Here we go.
It wouldn't be Tower Casuals without a good tangent.
It's 2021, and the space magic shooty loot RPG about a floating orbs zombie army is going hard on a storyline about accepting refugees and racism, whereas the Cuban guerrilla warfare shooter and the climate apocalypse shooter are both trying real hard to deny that politics exist. And I think that says a lot about Bungie's storytelling, is that they've taken this fantastical science fiction RPG that's in the future when, humanity's on the brink of extinction, and they're somehow telling a more compelling and timely story than the game's actually set in the modern era.
Mm-hmm.
I think that just says a lot. Like, that's yet another thing. Like, we talk about commending the narrative team all the time. This is why. Like, things like this. Like, they're finding a way to take issues that we are discussing right now and bring them into this setting. And I mean, they're not just restricting it to these written lores, right? Like, the written lores may go more in depth, but we know that, like, Lakshmi she's a space racist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She's a racist, she's a fascist.
Which is hilarious because she's not even like, I mean, technically, yeah, she's a human, but like she's a robot.
Right. And so it's just absolutely fascinating to see this, and I really can't wait to see how this story unfolds the rest of this season and even into beyond, into the Witch Queen. We're going to suffer the effects of what she's doing in the tower right now, probably for the rest of the Light and Dark saga. For every week it's making me increasingly more worried about labeling that end of the season event as the epilogue. I'm really kind of terrified about what that means for the city right now, given what she's doing. So, But that's going to do it for Lore this week.
Nice.
3 really good pieces. I'm starting to run out of weapons. We're going to have to start moving on to the armors pretty soon.
Cool. I like armor.